fellow travelers, welcome to the 98th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage Ryan Turford, and I am joined for the first time in a fortnight. He's back, y'all.
More than a fortnight.
The blandest of all explosions. Garret Bland finally returns to the show, the level 99 Aulph Medic. How's it going, Garret?
Let me tell you, I went on an adventure. It's probably not an RPG adventure, but I've been venturing off. Yes, I've been on vacation for 4 weeks. I got back last week on Monday, and that was actually a holiday for the US, Juneteenth. And then right then and there, after I got a couple hours of nap, we drove for 3 hours to get a puppy. And so now that we came back, we got a dog, and yeah, life is good.
Good God. life just flies by when you're in the fast lane, Garret. That's what I'm sensing from you. But
doing all sorts of stuff.
So before I get into the show proper, Garret, because I have to ask you about this, Rybo has a question for you. He asks, exactly what role was Garret playing during his sabbatical? What role, Garret, were you playing on your trip, on your journey to China?
I was playing the dumb American that didn't know anything at all over to China. No. So I went there for quite a long time because my wife is from China. Her hometown is a city southeast of Beijing called Tianjin, very big city. And it was actually the first time for me meeting her family. And of course, post-COVID, the rules in China are actually pretty on the down low now. It's actually pretty typical or similar to the US and in Canada, where it's like half people wear masks, half people don't, and so on and so forth. And so I've been there for 4 weeks, and then I also had a Chinese wedding ceremony, which was super cool. So we had that on June 3rd. And it went through the tea ceremony. If people don't know, the Chinese wedding ceremony is very different than from the
I was just saying, I literally know nothing about it, so please explain.
Yeah. Well, I had to go through the kind of like the story or the ceremony between me and Fiona. And it's very typical where, family kind of congregate together. She comes up across the aisle. What's the major difference was like the tea ceremony. And so I had to give tea to Fiona's parents. And then Fiona had to give tea to my mom, who was there for the wedding. And then what else was different is that kind of the symbolism behind like different kind of nuts. And then like what's the we had to do speeches as well in the middle of the ceremony. It wasn't vows like between us. It was more like speeches for her parents, and then for everyone. And her family was basically there for this ceremony. So yeah, very unique experience. I never thought in my life I would do it, but I did it, and it was super fun. And then afterwards, I had to serve rice wine to everyone, to all the elders, which was fun. So everyone else got drunk. I did not.
On my wedding day, you would think the groom would be allowed to be able to get drunk, but
I just didn't have time. I just we had to serve to all the different families. Let me tell you, every other day I drank a lot. They know how to drink. They literally just go through customs of just drinking rice wine over and over and over again and cheering everyone. It's very nice. And I think the biggest thing for me was the language barrier. I don't know Chinese too much. I am learning Chinese right now, but a very entry level. So I picked up some words, but I can't pick out, information or sentences right now. So yeah, that was probably the hardest part. But other than that, her family was super nice, super welcoming. Had a lot of good food, dude. Like China is on another level with food. It's crazy. Her mom cooks like the best food. So it was really nice being over there. And then for a few days, I was in Beijing, did the tourist stuff over there, visited the Forbidden Palace. And then also visited one of the temples, Temple of Heaven. very famous wonders over there. I actually visited throughout the cultural district as well. Really cool. It has a night market and a bunch of different food and trinkets and whatever. Very lively around that area. And then on the last bit of my vacation, we went to Hong Kong for a couple days. We were initially going to do 4 days, but it was raining like crazy over there. Apparently it rains like nonstop in a certain time of the year. So we shortened it to 2 days and just did a little bit here and there for stuff. But yeah, Hong Kong is much different than mainland China. Let me tell you.
Different countries, Garrett. Of course they're going to be different. I know you mean though. I know.
But well, 150 years of British rule will do that too. It's the driving that messed me up so much because they drive on the opposite side.
Yeah. Well, we found that out because when I went to Japan, Garrett, we rented a car the entire time we were there for 2 weeks and drove across the country of Japan, and it was the same thing. We ran into the same hurdles.
Oh, really?
Opposite side of the road as well. Which is,
I didn't realize that China or Japan did that too. That's interesting.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. Also, you brought up the famous tagline from the hit movie Hong Kong 97, starring Jason Patric, aka the T-1000. Also, the hit line from the famous video game Hong Kong 97 on the Super Famicom. Of course, one of the most infamously bad video games of all time because it never came out because it was so bad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That, by the way, Garrett, if you've never seen Hong Kong 97 before, after the show's over, you got to go to YouTube and Google or look up videos about Hong Kong 97. Because boy,
I'm scared.
That's a game. But I want to point out Yarden's comment here. Yarden said, "What? You're officially married now, Garrett? Congrats!" Even though I think you were already married before and you got married.
Yes, we did a court wedding like in 2021. And just during all the COVID stuff, we just had to go through it. But yeah, I am kind of like, I wouldn't say officially married, but symbolically and like overall married. But we're definitely going to do a third wedding in the US as well. Nice. But that'll take some time. But it's going to be more low key. It's not going to be like this big fancy wedding or perhaps it's just inviting some friends.
So I can't just invite the entire Discord to come, Garrett? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, come on over. Actually, you know what? I'll throw in a Discord party. How about that? I'll just do a live stream of my wedding. I'm sure everyone will be happy with that.
Hey, you say that, you joke about that, Garrett, but you know that people would actually be interested in watching that. Like that could be that could be a thing. People would like that.
That could be a thing. We can make content.
I mean, Garrett, you missed it because while you were away, Sean Capri decided one day to just randomly hop into the Discord, in the general Discord chat, and just sit there and just stream buying eShop games without telling anyone he was doing this. So then people just started randomly coming in and watching Sean buy random eShop games until we eventually got Sean on the phone and we were talking to him about him buying the random eShop games, and we convinced him to buy some really bad games. It was great. Make some bad decisions.
Bad cheap games or bad
it was a good mix. For example, he was like, well, I'm at $197. And I'm like, well, you might as well get a couple 50-cent games to kind of round things up to an even 200. And of course we had to make sure he got to an even 200 by finding games that cost 7 cents in the eShop, Garrett. 7 Canadian. It's not even American money. 7 Canadian cents. That's
7 Canadian cents.
That's like 3 US cents right there.
Yeah. Wow.
The circus of value
crazy.
is ever present with this. Anyways, we're 10 minutes in the show. We should probably actually get into, the show proper because people are here to, for that RPG talk. So, folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do it. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right now over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and let us know in that comments below what you're excited about with some of the awesome games coming out later this year. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to subscribe to us there if you haven't hit that subscribe button, or rate us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It does help the show get discovered and get more people in the cave with us. And then last but not least, if you want this show a little bit early on the audio feeds, or if you want one giant wall of Carpool Gaming content or some exclusive content, head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar and out comes content just like Sean H. Thank you so much for Sean H. for joining the exclusive tier. Awesome Dave 1337 for upgrading to gold. And then Garrett, get this.
Whoa.
Trucker Sloth is back as an ultimate producer this month.
Dang.
I know. I couldn't believe it either because, Trucker Sloth had been a long steward of the ultimate producership for a while. He had signed off, but he's back, baby. He's back with a vengeance in that $50 tier. Thank you so much to all of our patrons.
Tier. Dang. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And for supporting us, of course. And also, last but not least, we were told we weren't promoting this enough, so I want to make sure to shout it out here. Head on over to our website, carpoolgaming.com, if you're interested in getting an RPG Cave t-shirt or any of our other t-shirts, including some cool limited edition designs and also one for your favorite Carpool Gaming show. Or if you want a cool mug, like the mug that Sean was showing off the other day. We have bigger mugs now, Garrett. We had the small mugs before on the old shirt store, but now we got bigger mugs.
Are we talking soup? Are we talking like you could put soup in these mugs? Or
you're almost there. You're almost at soup.
Okay.
Level. It's like it's like this. There's some girth.
So very, very fancy, like coffee with like a bunch of whipped cream on top type of cup.
I think you could probably do it. Like I don't have one for reference for scale, but Sean Capri, he showed one off on camera. It looks pretty big. It looks pretty big.
Okay.
Definitely like the older coffee mug was definitely more of a tea mug, whereas this one's definitely for coffee. So
got it.
There you go.
Cool.
Carpoolgaming.com. Check it out. But it's time, Garrett, because now you're finally back. First of all, and thank you so much for coming back, Garrett.
Yes, of course.
As well. It is time to read from the sacred texts because Garrett, there was a whole bunch of news that happened while you were in China.
Whole bunch of news.
Matt and I actually did an entire show about that last week. So huge thank you to Matt for filling in for Garrett last week.
Thanks,
we're not going to go through all that again because even though Garrett, I know there's probably some news stories you probably would have wanted to talk about last week. We might touch on some of that stuff a little bit later, but we are going to kind of talk about the Nintendo Direct that happened this past week. And I know what you're thinking. Yes. Nintendo Drive already did the Nintendo Direct. Ryan Turfer was even on that Nintendo Drive special episode about the Nintendo Direct. That is 100% correct information, but Garrett Bland wasn't on that episode. And
that's true.
There were some pertinent RPG announcements that I honestly want to talk to you about because I think this will be fun. So during the Nintendo Direct, I honestly thought we were going to get more RPG stuff, Garrett. We only got 3 really big announcements of consequence at this Direct. First one, we got to start off with Super Mario RPG getting a full remake that's coming out November 17th. The trailer for this, Garrett, looks pretty gosh darn good. It looks like they got like a good 3D style for the game. They're moving away from the kind of like claymation-y style, toy look from the original game and kind of making it look more almost like, Mario 3D World or something like that, but as an RPG. But I'm pretty excited about this one. But Garrett, I want to know where your hype is at for Mario RPG.
I'm not too familiar with Super Mario RPG. I really haven't played it. Actually, I didn't really know about it too much until like recently, like probably a few years ago. So I know everyone's like, there's a lot of people out there, huge fans of the game. They really wanted it on Nintendo Switch Online for the longest time. They were questioning Square Enix and Nintendo why this game hasn't been announced, and now you know exactly the reason why this game was not announced for Nintendo Switch Online, because of course that they want to bring it back and get a full-fledged $60 or 60 USD from your pockets for a brand new remake. And I don't blame them. I'm honestly excited for this game. I did get Nintendo vouchers off of a Costco deal, and one of my vouchers was Tears of the Kingdom, and I still have a free voucher. So I think this one is gonna be the second voucher. I'm very excited for this one for sure.
Yeah, I would say I would imagine anyways, like the direction you'd be going in for vouchers at this point, it would be this or Mario Wonder, like one of the two of those, which we're not going to talk too much about Mario Wonder on this show, but that game looks really good too.
That game looks great too. I'm not a huge platformer fan. I like Mario games in general. They're fun. But yeah, Wonder is not like the very top of my list in my games for this year.
For sure. I think Yarden puts it best here. This game is voucher worthy. I 100% think so as well. In fact, I'm actually glad that they're not charging $70 like that for this one, like they are with
That's true.
Kingdom, because they could have. People would have paid the toll, because it's actually cheaper than if you bought it for Super Nintendo when the original came out, because that was $100 on cartridge, because the cartridge was so big.
My goodness.
Yeah, that was back when Square.
Yeah, $100 in the 90s, right?
Yeah, that's basically like close to 150 now at this point, USD.
That's insane.
Because like that, because that was back when Square Enix's cartridges were all very expensive. Like Chrono Trigger was, the Final Fantasies were all the same boat because of how much stuff they actually had to put in the cartridge itself. So, this is one that I'm actually pretty excited about. Again, like, I played the original game back in the day. I was one of those people who didn't like the game when we first played it, because I remember my brother Kyle and I rented this game, but I just didn't really get into it. I kind of like scoffed it off a bit, but it wasn't until I played it later in my years on emulator, when I was really getting into emulator stuff in the like mid 2000s, where I was all over
when it was game. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when I actually really gave this game a chance, and I'm glad that I did. And you're right, like when like people were really anticipating this to come to Switch Online, especially because it was very telling that this came to the Super Nintendo Classic but never came to Switch Online at all.
Oh, I didn't
know. And it was
that.
on Virtual Console as well. Like it was on Virtual Console for both Wii and Wii U, and the only thing it was missing from was Switch Online, which is very telling of what their plans were for this game. I'm just amazed this game's being made at all, though, because of all the powers that be that would have had to come together to put this game together, because like Square must be either contributing to this game, or at the very least they have, Square Enix is blessing to remake this. But I'm excited to find out. But I'm going to bring in Sean Capri. Garrett, I don't know if you've heard of this individual before.
He's the guy that runs forever, right? He's the Forrest Gump.
He's the newest
across Canada.
He's the Canadian Forrest Gump. I mean, it's one of those things.
I just ran and ran. Anyways, we can keep on going.
So Sean Capri asked a question. For those of us who didn't play Super Mario RPG back on the Super Nintendo, can you tell us what it's like to role play as Mario? What choices does Mario make in his adventure? Also, more importantly, tell us about the waifus and husbandos in Super Mario RPG. Also, finally, welcome back, Dr. Bland. We missed you. So there you go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sean.
So, I know you play
as
one,
Mario. No,
obviously. So you don't know the choices, Garrett. The choices you have to make as Mario in this game, of which there are none. There are no choices to make.
There's zero
in this game. I mean, as far as waifus and husbandos for this game, Garrett. Yeah, I don't know who you even pick here. You got Peach, you got Mario,
you got Peach.
You got your boy Mario, Gino, I guess, but he's a puppet. I don't really know. Like, that's weird. It's weird to call Gino a husbando because he's a puppet, Garrett.
Yeah, he's not actually a living being. He is made out of wood, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. I heard Bowser's cool in this game, actually.
Yeah,
like, he has a good writing or whatever.
Yeah, like it was when this was kind of where they started to give Bowser more of his personality and give him more story and have him be like have him be a bigger part of the story in the Mario games.
Okay.
Also, I love how Ron Savoy just came in and was like, "What did I miss?" And literally, when he wrote that was when we were talking about how Gino might not be able to be a husbando because he's a puppet. I just wanted to throw that out there as well. But
that's a good quote.
You also got Malo as well, and again, that's weird. It'd be weird to call Malo a husbando, I guess. So I don't know what you do here.
Sean, this game came out in 1996. Okay, sounds good.
This is leading us down a dark path, Garrett. So I gotta get us back on board. Like honestly, I like the choice. Obviously, there aren't too many choices as far as dialogue choices or anything like that. Because again, it's a Mario RPG. You're not expecting too much of that stuff. But the gameplay is super fun. I love kind of the active time battle system where you time your attacks. And if you time them correctly with, either the jumps or, kicking a shell and whatnot, they do extra damage. Which of course we saw like later become a central stay in the Mario and Luigi series, which was kind of like the spiritual successor to Mario RPG.
Yeah, which was super cool. Games are still coming out. Like, I don't know. Was there one on the Switch? I don't think so. Actually,
there was
Mario
not,
and
no.
Luigi?
No.
Oh, that's due. Hopefully next year.
The last one we got, actually, Garrett, was Mario and Bowser Inside Story remake on the 3DS.
Yeah, on 3DS. That was like 2018 or 17. It was like one of the last ones.
They were like, "Oh my god, we can't believe this failed because it came out a year after the Switch was out, and no one wants to play 3DS."
I wonder why.
Yeah. Same thing happened to Metroid: Samus Returns as well, which made me very sad.
Yes. Yeah. So cool. I'm very excited for this game. I think I will get it day one. So Same. This will be my holiday Nintendo game.
Yeah, I'm excited, and honestly, I think it's going to be one of the biggest games in November to play. I think it's coming out at the perfect time, like after all those October games. I don't know if you checked your calendar since you left, Garrett, as far as October, but October is full. We don't need more games in October, developers.
My September's full, and then therefore my October's full. Like September is like done, and then so I don't know.
Somehow October, Garrett, is actually worse than September.
I don't know how. All right, then.
I mean, we're at the point where Spider-Man and Mario are coming on the same day. So,
no, this is rough.
Everything's just releasing on top of each other. But next thing we got from the Direct, which got me very excited, Garrett, and I've talked about this series for a while. That's Star Ocean, the second story R. It's been announced. It's coming November 3rd. We had this leak a little bit because the logo for this leaked on the Square Enix website a little bit before this went live. But this is a big one, man, because I don't know if folks have played this Star Ocean, the second story, but this game's legit. This was on the PlayStation 1. It's an action RPG in the Star Ocean series. Star Ocean, for folks that are unfamiliar with Star Ocean, is very much sci-fi mixed with fantasy, where even though there's outer space exploration as part of the story, you're actually usually playing a crew who's been, marooned on a fantasy-like planet, like a medieval fantasy planet, essentially. And you're basically trying to, reunite with your fleet and kind of escape the planet, essentially, is usually what the storylines are for a lot of these games. But Star Ocean, the second story, is legit one of the best PlayStation 1 RPGs of all time.
I've heard. Yeah, I've heard it's the best Star Ocean game.
Yes,
of the series. Yeah,
100%. Okay. It is easily the best Star Ocean game. Cool. By a landslide. Like Star Ocean First Departure is kind of a close second, and then I mean you can make an argument for a couple of the other Star Ocean games, but I would say definitely like Second Story is easily the best one. And I don't know if you got a chance to see the trailer for this, Garrett, but they're doing this in HD 2D. Mixed with these hand-drawn kind of, characters and environments. And it has this really cool look to it where it's not doing the Octopath Traveler thing, but it is in a way. So you're kind of getting like the best of both worlds. So I like that they're really trying to do something different with the HD 2D engine on this one.
So yeah, it has some depth, but it's still like the kind of remade 2D hand-drawn type of stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. This is not going to be a day one for me. Star Ocean is not, I'm not too familiar with the series. I hear it's a hit and miss all the time, but I hear this game is probably the requirement. Like if you're going to play any game, this is the one out of all the games of the franchise. So. Cool.
Absolutely. Like, I'm glad that this is the one that's getting this remake treatment, because this is the one that everyone who's at all interested in Star Ocean should start with. And not only that too, it's like the Star Ocean games are kind of like Final Fantasy games where you don't have to worry about playing the other games in the series. They don't cross over. There's small references to other games in the series, but you will be totally fine. Anyone who decides to start with this one, and it should be totally fine. But
they have a cool aesthetic. Of course.
Yeah.
With these series.
Especially like you don't see a lot of sci-fi Japanese role-playing games. Like that's something we've talked about on other episodes as well.
That's true. And they have like this kind of always a blue, green, teal kind of palette going on in every single one of their games. It's actually neat to see. But yeah, if any, RPG fans out there, if you're wanting to go into the Star Ocean series, definitely wait for this one.
Yeah,
I think this would be a good entry.
100%. Savoy Prime asked the question though about Star Ocean. Do you think there will ever be a great Star Ocean game again? Seems that second story was the last one that critics and players loved equally. Because to your point, Garret, Star Ocean in recent years has kind of been all over the place. I will say, because I did the review of Star Ocean, the newest one, the Divine Force on the channel, and that was a game that I actually liked a lot more than I thought I was going to. And I think that one actually reviewed pretty well as well. So I actually think that was kind of the last good Star Ocean game, because I think it's not amazing, but I think it's a good game. And I think it's definitely it's definitely one of the best modern entries in the series for sure. So I do think there are good Star Ocean games, and I think there's the possibility we will get another good one as well that is original after second story. But if you're craving that Star Ocean style of game, then I think this remake's going to do a great job. So
definitely
that this is going to be the next big Star Ocean game. And if this one sells, I really think that they will actually be able to propel this to bring us more Star Ocean stuff. But actually, I'm going to bring this question in from the chat. Actually, this comes from Raul Sanchez, who asks the question: so, what game would you compare it to know if I should buy it? So, the Star Ocean games are actually very similar to the Tales games. So, if you've played any of the Tales of games, they're action RPGs. They're semi-open world. They have, again, a lot of fantasy elements and sci-fi elements in them. But the combat
it's a
itself
linear story too, right? Like it's an open area-ish, and then you go to like the next cutscene, there's party members, it's action. Yeah,
it's an action RPG as well. So again, a lot of, it's not turn-based combat or anything like that. It's very action focused, like the Tales games. So I would say that's the closest comparison. So if you've ever played the Tales games and you like them, I think Star Ocean's actually going to be up your alley, because likewise, they kind of did that with the Divine Force as well, where that feels like the Square Enix takes on a Tales of game in all the right ways, which is what I think one of the reasons why I actually really like that game. But yeah, perfect. Well, Garret, the last one I want to mention here, Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince has been announced. It's coming out December 1st, which I think is actually a pretty good time for that game to come out. People were wondering if they were ever going to do another Dragon Quest Monsters game, and then they announced it at that live stream like 2 years ago.
I remember.
If you remember that, yeah,
it was super weird.
So it sounds like this is finally coming out. It looks cool. I think the trailer looks cool. I don't know if this one's a day one for me. I personally think I can. This is the one of the three that we talked about here that I can personally wait on. But what about you?
Yeah, when will it come out again?
Monsters, December 1st.
December 1st. I don't normally get December games because I just get jam packed with previous games. I think I'm more excited about this game because I'm definitely into the Pokemon monster catching type of genre, and it's kind of more or less of that with Dragon Quest. And I've always been interested in the Dragon Quest series. I love Dragon Quest builders. I want to get, play and be through at least one mainline Dragon Quest game eventually. That's the hope. But yeah, this is definitely gonna not be a day one for me. This smells like a sale to me. Like, okay, come back 3 months, 6 months from now. What's the price now? Is it gonna be half? If it's like half or like a little bit more than that, I'll probably bite. And I'll probably play on Steam Deck or something like that to get the achievements. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for that one.
Nice. Yeah, again, I'm in the same boat with this one. There's only one video game I'm buying in December, Garret, and that is Avatar Frontiers of Pandora.
Why?
It's the only game I'm thinking of in December. But
you like Avatar?
Point, actually, have you seen the trailer for that game? It looks pretty cool.
It looks good. Now, don't get me wrong. It looks good. It's just, I'm intrigued. Why are you into the Avatar game? Is it Ubisoft?
I'm glad you asked. One, it's Ubisoft, and it's basically Far Cry on Pandora, which gets me excited because I like Far Cry, and I actually like the world of Avatar. I don't love the movies, the Avatar movies. Although I did like Way of Water a lot more than the first one. I do think it's a much better movie than the first one. But I think the universe of Avatar, I actually think makes for a great setting for a video game. Combined with the fact that I'm imagining in my head the Na'vi abilities you're going to have to traverse that environment and some of the combat abilities you're going to have, I think it's going to make for a really interesting game. So that's why I'm actually pretty excited about that one. But yeah, cool. We'll see. That's why I'm like, it's going to be tough to imagine me picking up Monsters because of Avatar coming out. But
of course.
Garrett, speaking of games that are coming out, that is it for the Nintendo Direct and that little segment. We're half an hour into the show, Garrett, and there's another game we got to talk about that you might be pretty excited about.
Oh my gosh.
It's so pretty.
That's a controller.
It's so pretty. It's so pretty. For
is it really
audio
good?
Listeners, I am holding up the Starfield controller in the box. It looks
so good.
It's a prettier controller, Garrett. It looks cool. I also was like this close to getting the headset too, but I held off.
You held back.
Yeah, I managed
to have a headset.
I managed to brave the storm. So before I let you go and give me your whole spiel about Starfield, Garrett, I want to bring in two questions from the audience that both kind of asked for the same thing here. Yarden asks, been waiting for Garrett to get back. Starfield seems to be one of his most anticipated games in quite a while, so I want to hear all about his thoughts. Did the showcase and the Direct ease some of his concerns? Tell us how you're feeling about it since launch is closing in. And then Nagachaka also asks, question for Garrett, what is your current hype level for Starfield, and are you getting the Constellation Edition? So... And of course, Yarden in the chat, very excited that it's Starfield time.
Here we go, Starfield. Yeah. So actually, before I get into Starfield, interesting story. I do have internet coverage. When I was over in China, I had international coverage with my phone. It's auto VPN, so I'm able to get into YouTube and Twitter. And so I've been keeping up, of course. Kind of a dumb thing I did, and I didn't realize this was going to happen. I downloaded Tears of the Kingdom because via mobile hotspot because I thought unlimited data, that means awesome, I can download a game through this phone internet stuff, and then you reach a cap on that unlimited data and they like cut your speed like 10 times down. So I really struggled going through the Xbox showcase on my mobile phone at 360p, barely seeing what was going on with the Xbox showcase and the Starfield Direct. But after many buffers and many we got there. So I went through it, and then when I came back, I did go through it in 4K just to make sure, I refresh my memory, go through the Direct and figure out all the different systems. And man, Bethesda is doing what they're doing best, is they're showcasing what all the little systems that they have in Starfield. And there's just so much depth to Starfield that makes me super excited. First off, I'm not like the biggest Starfield, like space explorer fan like Sean. It's fine for me, but it's really cool to have that Bethesda flavor into this game. So VATS is off, that's totally fine. It looks like the shooting, the combat looks much better than Fallout 4 or 76. I love how there's always a spend to melee, and like making sure that melee combat and other type of kind of weird gadgety weapons or whatever, other than just guns, is into the combat as well. So that's Fallout, what they're doing best. Or not Fallout, sorry, Bethesda, what they're doing best, right? I'm very interested in kind of the extra systems that they put in there, apart from what I've seen before in Bethesda games. Really the shipbuilding and like going through your ship, and like you can go through different components, and has its own system. Again, they're really good at making systems, right? They know how to do it in Skyrim with enchanting weapons and smithing or whatever. They've done it with Fallout with gun smithing and so on and so forth. And now they're doing it with ships and of course coming back with factions, coming out with companions, coming out with what's so yeah. Overall, I'm very excited for this game. There's just so much stuff. I'm very excited for this just because I know this is gonna be a Bethesda like RPG. That's what they showcased at the Direct.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people were like, Ron mentions in the chat who was on the fence at first, but then after the deep dive, they're kind of all in on this. And I think I heard a lot of people say very similar sentiments where, that original gameplay showcase, it was fine. It's nothing to write home about, but it didn't look, awful. But this showcase really proved exactly why we should be excited about this game. Because you're absolutely right. Like, I think all the systems they showed off look really incredibly cool. And even though I'm not probably personally going to interact with everything they probably showed off, I'm just super excited to explore that universe and find out what's out there, explore some of the depths of some of these planets and figure out what's there. They did also mention though, afterwards, after the Direct, that they mentioned that like 90% of the planets are going to be uninhabited. And that's for good reason, not because yes, in theory, they could add life to a lot of these planets to make them more, visually pleasing because there's life there. It's more to actually represent what it would be like to explore outer space. And that's kind of the reason why they did it that way. Because in theory, how many planets do we really explore in our own solar system that have support for life on them? Like, that's kind of the idea that you're talking about, where like there are going to be some planets where, humans have kind of settled there. And there are going to be, very few planets where there's actual life on those planets, but there's going to be a lot of barren rocks that you go and explore. And it's mostly there for the exploration process or gathering materials or just finding out what's out there and finding out some weird stuff that are on these planets. So yeah.
Yes.
I'm super
stoked. I want to touch on that. So space exploration and the way that they're doing the planets, that is something that they have not done before. And that's something I'm very interested in, how the procedural part kind of blends in with the handcrafted part. Because there's no doubt this is their biggest game yet. Like, people are saying, oh, it's going to be procedural. It's going to be empty. It's not going to have anything. It's like, guys, it has way more content than Fallout 4. And Fallout 4 is like crazy big too. So calm down with that. I'm interested how the procedural though, like, you go into a planet, how did they generate it? Todd Howard was mentioning that two people can go to the same planet and then it could be completely different, or they have different adventures or different stories or so on and so forth. So there is a procedural aspect to it, and I wonder how deep that goes.
Yeah.
I think that's mainly going to be just surveying a planet. Maybe have a bandit camp or a mining camp or some other wonder or remark or something like that. That'll be a little different than what the other player is experiencing. So yeah, that's one. I wouldn't say it's a concern, but it's more like I'm intrigued how that's going to play out. Yeah.
Well, especially after what we saw with No Man's Sky, because even though I think it's unfair to compare this game versus No Man's Sky, because they're two very different things, both on like the scale, let alone the budget and everything else with this game. That's different between this and No Man's Sky, but also the one common thing I think between these two games is the procedurally generated planets, where when we saw the procedurally generated planets in No Man's Sky, like it almost like it just wasn't exciting. Like, going to those planets was kind of boring, and you were kind of in and out. So I hope that they find a way to at least make it so that there's at least something for you to find or something for you to do on those procedurally generated planets. Like, there's got to be some reason to go there other than the fact that you're Sean Capri and you like space and you're in your astronaut suit. Like, because Sean Capri, by the way, mentions he's getting an astronaut suit, Garrett, to then wear to play.
I love it.
This game. So
I hope he has a Canadian flag like on his sleeve, ready to go.
I hope so too. We need to make sure Sean Capri is doing this right. So yes, I really like, that is kind of a worry, but ultimately I'm not worried about this game because they said there's a ton of crafted planets. It's not just like Outer Worlds where there's 5 crafted planets and then that's it. Like, it sounds like they crafted a lot of planets for you to explore. It's just not everything.
A lot of writing, a lot of lines generated for this game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course we know there's DLC coming, Garrett. That's probably going to add even more planets and more weird systems and stuff. So yeah, I'm interested to see all that. But then circling back to Nagachaka's question, Garret, I got to ask you, what are you getting in the Constellation Edition? Are you getting a watch that you can wear, a fully functional watch?
I am not getting a watch for this game. Constellation Edition looks super dope, super cool. Yeah. I just don't have things to put. Like I don't have space to put things, you know? So like if I have this kind of space toy box thing, it's like, all right, let me shove it in the closet and do nothing about it until I move or something like that. So I'm definitely gonna get, of course, play it via Game Pass. I'm thinking of doing the premium edition so I can get access 5 days early. So that's a premium upgrade. That includes some bonus content. So
well, not only that, but I think it's a no-brainer if you're going to get the DLC anyways, which I know both of us are going to be in that boat anyways. Like we're gonna want the DLC expansions for this game, I think. So especially with how good like the Skyrim expansions were.
Yes,
I think I'd be all in.
Fallout 4 expansions were pretty good too.
Yeah,
they were pretty impressive.
Well, even Fallout 3's expansions, even going back that far, I think like Bethesda's actually done a really good job with DLC expansions for their games. So I'm actually pretty confident that the Starfield special pass is probably going to be worth it in the end.
Yeah.
But Sean Capri and I ride or die with the watches. We're getting Garret.
You're getting the watches.
Our watches. It's going to be.
It's going to tell the time.
It is going to tell the time. It's also going to tell me my phone messages as well, Garret.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have an Apple Watch, so it actually seems like a perfect kind of excuse to get in on that game.
Go for it.
But then real quick, before we get into our last kind of topic for the night, Garret, was there any other game or series or any kind of news that happened over the holiday that you, or during your sabbatical, that you did get a chance to talk about? I left them all in the doc, by the way, in case you wanted stuff for reference.
Yeah. I'm looking through here. I'm intrigued about Dragon's Dogma 2.
Yeah.
We saw some gameplay off of that. The Steam page is up. It's looking really nice. We'll see how Capcom does with that game. Sea of Stars coming to Game Pass day one. Let me tell you, I mean, like, maybe it's not surprising, but at the same time, it surprised me just how much support that game has, and developer is pretty well known.
The hilarious part about that, Garret, was we were worried for the longest time if that game would even going to come to Xbox at all, and now we're at the position now where it's on Game Pass and it's on Xbox. And of course, Ron in the chat, of course, echoes your excitement for Dragon's Dogma. I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I think, Dragon's Dogma 1, it's good, but it's a little dated now. But man, and updated systems and just have that same framework, that same idea, it could be very competitive, high fantasy RPG that people would really like. Sea of Stars. I bet Microsoft went over to them and was like, "Are you gonna make an Xbox?" It's like, depends. and then
they offered them the big like brown bag with the dollar sign on it, and they're like, "Please take this. We want your game," kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I just want to mention Cyberpunk 2077. I've played a little bit, but not so much to go through the game 100%. I'm glad Phantom Liberty is coming out this year, and I'm hearing that they really overhaul like most of the systems and the writing, and it's a huge update to the most of the game. So I'm pretty excited for Cyberpunk when the DLC comes out later this year.
Yeah,
of course. Go for it.
I was just gonna say, like with Cyberpunk, like I will obviously say for folks that are kind of who didn't listen to last week's show, just make sure that if you are interested in this, if you find Cyberpunk on sale, get it now. But I would wait to play it until this patch comes out, because Phantom Liberty, even you get all a lot of good in-game upgrades without the DLC. But if you just have the main game, but make sure to wait to play it before the DLC comes out. Like, in fact, Yarden echoes this in the chat. Just restart it when the DLC comes out, because it'll be a much better experience if you just wait till then. At this point,
cool. And of course, Atlas coming in full out, man. Persona 3 Reload, Persona 5 Tactica, and Metaphor ReFantazio. 3 really, I'm sure, Persona 3 Reload's going to be excellent.
Yeah.
Persona 5 Tactica, it looks good, but it does look like a like kind of a B team, someone's trying this out type of game. So we'll see how the reviews go. I expect it's going to be for the Persona tactical fans, which I'm very, very gonna much enjoy. And then Metaphor looks pretty good. Of course, it's a little bit farther out, so we'll see more gameplay later. But yeah, I'm very excited for all 3 of those games.
Yeah, I think Atlas had a great selection of games over on Xbox, and I think honestly the one I'm actually most excited about is Metaphor, because it's a brand new IP, brand new universe, but still a lot of the same systems from Persona. And I'm actually pretty excited about this. Like I'm excited about this. Super Mario. First of all, hello, welcome on in. We are currently talking about we're kind of rounding some news stories up because Garrett's been away in China. So we were just talking about some of the stuff that happened while he was away, but then we're going to get into Final Fantasy 16 talk pretty soon.
Yes. One more game I want to finish out. Sorry, I just had it. Was it Clockwork? Yes, Clockwork Revolution from In Exile.
Yeah.
That came out of nowhere. And that's going to be a first-person RPG coming from In Exile, the people, that was in involvement of the original Fallout series. And of course, the latest Wasteland 3 was really, really good isometric role-playing game. Now they're taking a shot at the first-person RPG. I'm pretty excited. It looks so close to BioShock Infinite, but instead of an adventure thriller, we're going to have a role-playing game off of this steampunk kind of blend. I like it. I like it a lot.
That game looks awesome. I'm actually pretty excited about it as well. I'm curious to when it actually comes out, because we still don't really have like
probably a couple years
window, but I don't know. Maybe it's closer than we think, because they showed some gameplay in that trailer. So
yeah.
I'm really interested. It looks like BioShock, but a role-playing game, and that the prospect of that gets me very excited. So and we know that they're very good at writing on that team. So I can't wait to find out more about that one. Well, Garret, it's time to party up, because I don't know if you knew this game, Garret, but a whole bunch of a little game called Final Fantasy 16 came out this week, and we got a boatload of questions about Final Fantasy 16 this week. A whole boatload from 3 people. 3 people asked a bunch of questions about this game.
Of course they did.
We're going to kind of get into it. We're going to start with Drellesh, who asks 1, 2, 3, 4 questions about Final Fantasy 16. So first off, in what ways has the game pushed the envelope in the RPG genre? Also, what surprised you about playing this version of the game that you didn't expect at all? Does this mark the new beginning of the Final Fantasy franchise, in your opinion? And how might this influence the later release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Might we see some new battle mechanics, or will they stick with the old? So first off, Garret, we've both been playing Final Fantasy 16 a little bit. I definitely have, but I think I've been playing it more than you, because again, you just came back. So I'm curious to know, though, because we both talked about this on Twitter, where we were mixed about this game. So I want to know from you, Garret, just top level thoughts. What are your top level thoughts on 16 at this point? What has you kind of in the midpoint? Like, what are your mixed thoughts? I want to talk this out.
So, this is kind of the first Final Fantasy game I'm really like going through. Like, I'm gonna finish this game. I'm really wanting to finish this game. So, take my opinion and thoughts with a grain of salt compared to the previous Final Fantasy games, because I don't have much experience. But it's interesting to go through this game, and I thought it was going to be way different than I thought it was going to be. And I actually went back and watched the direct, or not direct, but the showcase for Final Fantasy 16 with the PlayStation. They went through so much information, right? And I thought in my head, it's like, wow, it looks like Witcher. It looks like it's going to go through a bunch of quests. It's going to be open. It's going to be, I have these things going in my head. When you actually play this, though, it's like, no, dude, this is a linear role-playing game that has like action mechanics. Like we're at that point with the combat it's the person that made Devil May Cry series. Like
this game is basically just Devil May Cry Final Fantasy.
It literally is Devil May Cry, the Final Fantasy game. So yeah, my top level thoughts are it's a beautiful game. It's a great game. It's much different than what I expected, but it's not bad. It's not like a bad game in whatsoever. It's just different than I thought. Extremely linear, which is, to be honest with you, what I know of the Final Fantasy games, it's very similar to, like, let's say a Final Fantasy 4 or Final Fantasy 6, where those are all linear games too. You go through a story and you just go through certain areas. So yeah, I don't know. I like it. But it's not what I expected for sure.
Yeah. And we've got this question a little bit later, but like, is it really an RPG? That's kind of even debatable at this point, because it in a way, I almost feel like this is as much of an RPG as, Jedi Survivor is, or a game like Devil May Cry is, where it really, in a lot of ways, it has some of the RPG trappings that we talked about, because we did, for folks that didn't know, because I know there was a lot of debate about this in the Discord today. Garret and I actually made a video back in the day. We did a whole episode about what makes an RPG an RPG and what we define as an RPG. And maybe at some point, Garret, we do an update about that in the future. But I know my thoughts really haven't really changed since that episode, is what we define an RPG as and what we don't.
Yeah.
And I still feel like this game fits into an RPG category, but it's flirting with the action RPG with action game with RPG elements subcategory kind of thing. It's getting, but and in fact, the game, believe it or not, that Final Fantasy 16 has actually reminded me of the most, which is weird to say, is Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy 7. That was the sequel to Final Fantasy 7 that they did on the PlayStation 2, which starred Vincent, one of the characters from Final Fantasy 7, and it was like a third person action shooter role-playing games. And in a way, that's kind of what this game kind of reminds me of. But just like you, Garret, my top level thoughts on this game, I was a little mixed on it at first. Like the first 10 hours, to your point, Garret, very linear, both from the game, the exploration method, but also the combat felt,
the combat, yes,
because you have a very limited selection of skills early on in the game. And it just really didn't have the level of combat variety that I was kind of hoping for. When I hear that the combat designer of Devil May Cry 5 is on this game, Garret, I'm expecting some pretty crazy combat, or the power progression to be finely tuned and not feel kind of samey, because that's what the Devil May Cry games kind of feel like, especially 5, which I think they were spot on with how that game kind of ramps up as you play it. And you never felt like the combat was really samey. But I think the first 10 hours, the combat for me was kind of a disappointment in a lot of ways. But as you get more of the icon abilities, as you start to mix and match a lot of those things with the skills you actually gradually earn throughout the game, I actually definitely became much more round on the combat after that, where I do think now where I'm at later in the story, because I'm fairly far into this game. I'm not going to, of course, spoil where I am, but my PlayStation 5, Garret, says I'm 74% through the game.
Okay, so you're a good bit in. Yes.
Yeah. And according to Muffin Mon in the Discord, that actually includes all the side quests too, because I've been doing every side quest. I've been doing every hunt. I've been literally doing everything in this game at this point. So I feel like I'm pretty far in. And at this point, I feel like the combat's totally opened up, and I'm really enjoying it much more than I was at the beginning of the game. And the story itself still has me hooked, even from the beginning. Like, I feel like it's got some low points, but there are some fantastic moments throughout with the different characters. And y'all aren't ready for some of the later game boss battles. Okay. I'm just going to say it right now. And that's all I'm going to say, or some of the moments that happen in the story later on. Cause there are some, there are some things that hit me in the feels for sure.
Okay.
Both in the excited sense and the sad sense.
Yeah. Just to give people a point of reference for me, I don't know what percentage I am, but I am level 20. I don't want to mention anything about the story, but I am level 20, and I guess I recently got the second icon.
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah, I know where you are. Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty early in the game, I hear it opens up, but man, like I would say the first 3 or 4 hours, I was really thinking to myself, how is this a role-playing game?
Yeah.
No joke. I was pretty confused by the story. Of course, it kind of conglomerates together after a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm digging it so far. The story itself, the visuals are spectacular in this game.
Yeah.
It's one of the best, most beautiful games I've seen ever. So kudos to them, man, to pulling this one off.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we answered some of Drellesh's stuff, but I wanna dive back into some of his questions again, just so we can make sure to answer these. Number one, in what ways does this game push the envelope of the genre? I think this game, more than anything, really just blurs the line between action RPGs and action games with RPG elements.
That's a good discussion to have, because as you said, with Star Wars Jedi Survivor, like what's really the difference between that and this game? The only thing I can think of is like you have some party members in there, maybe you have a little bit more skills to kind of like have some more variety, but other than that, I mean, the structure's pretty similar, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah, definitely.
For sure. Yeah, I don't really think it's pushed the envelope in a way, other than, of course, it's excellent writing and storytelling. It's incredible music,
writing,
and of course, the visual design in particular, I think is really pushing things forward for sure. As far, and we talked about what surprised us the most a little bit there. Does this mark a new beginning for the Final Fantasy franchise, in your opinion? Yes, because I feel like this is the direction they're going with for the mainline games going forward, is doing more of this, which I actually think, if they continue to do this and continue to go down this direction, then I think that they're going to actually be able to nail this formula, and we won't be talking about the unevenness of the game with later entries. Because you have to remember, this is the first time this team has really tried something like this. So I feel, and we see this with games all the time, where if it's a company's first take on something like this, I really feel like they are always able to iterate it more with the sequel, or like the third game that they kind of do in this style. Also, this kind of proves as well that Creative Business Unit 3 is kind of like the what I would say is they're basically the Naughty Dog of Square Enix at this point.
They're the top, man. What an incredible presentation of this game. I mean, yeah, maybe for the next few mainline titles they're gonna do this. I wonder, it's been Final Fantasy 15 came out 2015. That's 8 years. Can you imagine? We won't get another mainline game until 2031, possibly 2030. It's gonna be. I'm wondering if other types of mechanics or whatever is gonna influence it before 17 kind of just like comes to fruition. I'm not too sure what their pacing is, because of course, you got those filler gaps with side Final Fantasy games. Of course, Final Fantasy 7 going through those remakes. I'm curious if they'll go, because like every time I see like the later Final Fantasy games, they've been pretty different in terms of direction, mechanics. Like you go from 7 to 8 to 9. Oh, well, of course, 10, and then 11 and 13 are MMOs. But like you can imagine those later Final Fantasy games, they're pretty different from one another. Like you can tell how different they are. So yeah, I'll be curious to know what 17 is gonna actually be. Probably more action. It's gonna be like a legit action game.
It probably will be.
Role-playing game. Yeah.
I will actually, make the qualifier though. I actually think we see Final Fantasy 17 sooner than the gap that we had for 15 to 16, because I think the company was really trying to figure out what direction they were going to go in with this. Because I think the next Final Fantasy, the next mainline one, might not actually be Creative Business Unit 3. It might be another Square Enix studio, or they might decide with this that Creative Business Unit 3 is kind of the mainline Final Fantasy team now, and they get pulled off Final Fantasy 14 and someone else works on that. Like, I think one of those two things is going to be what happens here. whether the Creative Business Unit 3 goes all in on mainline or they go all in on 14 kind of thing. But we'll see. But yeah, this just proves again, Yoshi P and that team does not miss with their games. And please, for the love of God, Square Enix, let Soken compose everything. Soken, of course, the composer in this game. Fantastic. His music is incredible. And again, some of the later themes, like if you heard some of the great songs at the beginning, they're really good. But man, some of the songs in like even just some of the boss fights that I did this afternoon, Garrett, oh my God, it's so good. I love Soken's music. He's such a great composer. But then moving on, actually, one more thing from Josh, who mentions how will this influence the later release of 7 Rebirth? I don't think this influences at all. I think it's going to come out exactly the same. Just like I think the third 7 game, whatever it's going to be, end up being called, the third in the trilogy of the 7 Rebirth games, I think that stays the same too. Like I think they've found the system that works best for that game. And there might be some new mechanics, but I think beyond that, I don't think it's going to be too much. But anyways, Trevor/TPR/Taylor asked the question. By the way, yes, Taylor, I know that I said that in reverse. I have dyslexia. That's just what happens sometimes. Taylor asks, I have a question. I have been in fierce combat with my co-hosts about Final Fantasy 16 is a Final Fantasy game. In my opinion, the developer says it's a Final Fantasy game. So it is, and it's that simple. They argue that without a job system or RPG elements of previous Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy 16 doesn't deserve the label. I have no other Final Fantasy experience besides 16, and I still stand what I said. What do you and Garrett think? So this is actually an interesting question, Garrett, because you and I are kind of on opposite ends here, where I'm the Final Fantasy fanboy on Carpool Gaming. I'm the person who's played the most Final Fantasy. I love Final Fantasy. I think I'm definitely the biggest Final Fantasy fan on the team. Whereas you have barely played these games. Like you've dabbled with them before. You've never really finished a Final Fantasy game. So I can't really call you, I wouldn't say you're a Final Fantasy fan. So I'm interested to know what your take is before I give mine on whether or not you think Final Fantasy 16 is a mainline Final Fantasy game. Does it qualify?
Let me tell you something, Ryan. If that garbage of a game called Final Fantasy X is a Final Fantasy game, the gosh darn Final Fantasy 16 is definitely a Final Fantasy game. Let me tell you, 10, what is up with the main character laughing? What's with him with the undersea basket? Yeah, the laughing and then going through these weird sports balls and just I'm just joking, guys. I know a lot of 10 fans are out there, but 16, I mean, sure, it is a Final Fantasy game. Of course, as you said, Creative Business Unit 3. No one knows better than them what a Final Fantasy game is. And Yoshi P, let me tell you. So by definition, like, hey, if they say it's a Final Fantasy game, I'm with you, Trevor or Taylor or TPR or whatever. It is a Final Fantasy game. But I'll stick by that. I played a Final Fantasy game once I finished Final Fantasy 16. So over to you, Ryan. What do you think?
I, as the Final Fantasy diehard on the staff, agree with you, Garrett, where I also think, to your point, I honestly feel like when they look at this game, when Square, the company that makes Final Fantasy, looks at this game, they see that this is a Final Fantasy game. And while, yes, you could say, well, Ryan, we haven't really had a Final Fantasy game like this before, even though Final Fantasy 15 was an action RPG. And, we haven't really, there are definitely things, for example, that it's missing. For example, Taylor brings up the point, the job system, or other RPG elements from the Final Fantasy games. Honestly, one of the biggest things that makes it not feel like Final Fantasy actually is the magic system in this in particular. I think really makes it feel different, where magic is almost useless in this game. Like you have your little magic attacks that barely do any damage.
Blaster.
Yeah.
No joke.
You have the little blaster, and then you have the charged blaster, which also barely does anything too. You might it's good to use them when the enemy's out of range, but it's not, like the magic systems in previous Final Fantasy games. Or likewise, it would have been cool to maybe see characters in your party, or even characters that you meet throughout the game that are black mages or monks, or, the different Final Fantasy jobs, or a red mage. I'd love to come across a red mage as an example. Right. But again, that kind of plays into the lore that they built for this game. So I understand why they didn't do that. And I'm okay with it because, the idea of this game essentially is the only people that can use magic are the bearers and the dominants. And that's it. Everyone else can't use magic in this world. So it would make sense why they wouldn't have like your traditional Final Fantasy jobs and stuff like that. Although you do see that a little bit with some of the enemies you fight. And some of the human enemies you'll fight, black mages, or you'll fight white mages that have buffing abilities and stuff like that. So a lot of the other Final Fantasy mainstay stuff is there though. Still got chocobos. It's still got that Final Fantasy theme. There are airships in the game, despite the fact that you don't fly an airship. The Sid's there. Like everything that makes a Final Fantasy game a Final Fantasy game are there, as far as the motifs that make a Final Fantasy game the Final Fantasy game. Because it's not so much that it's a party-based game that has like really strong RPG elements that makes a Final Fantasy game a Final Fantasy game. What makes a Final Fantasy game is more about the world and the motifs that of the story they're kind of trying to craft here. And that's why I actually agree with the team that this is a Final Fantasy game, despite the fact that this is the type of combat system you'd normally see in like a Final Fantasy spinoff, like Stranger in Paradise. I do think it actually fits in the box of absolutely qualifying as a Final Fantasy game, despite the fact that it's so different from the other ones. And you're absolutely right, Garret. In fact, there will be no love on this podcast for Final Fantasy X ever, because you and I do not like that game.
We'll leave it in the dark. On my Vita.
Ha 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 ha.
I love it.
I couldn't help it. And then the last question, and again, we've kind of answered a little bit this one already, but I'll bring in Muffin Mon anyways. Kevin Ainsworth, who asked the question. Yes, question for the show. Building off Drellesh and Taylor's question, are we getting too loose with the definition of RPG? Final Fantasy XVI seems to have stripped the majority of RPG elements found in previous entry. So at what point do we say this isn't an RPG, but just an action game in the Final Fantasy universe? I'm very much of the opinion that just because games have RPG elements don't mean that they're RPGs. An example of an action adventure games with RPG elements could be God of War, Horizon, the new Assassin's Creed games, etc. And Final Fantasy 16 feels very much like me. And yeah, like we talked about that a little bit earlier, where it is like more like Jedi Survivor or like Horizon or some of those other games. But I don't know, there's something about this game in particular, Garret, that does feel more like it fits in the RPG qualifications we set out to describe on that episode where we talked about what defines an RPG.
Yeah, it's very limited in terms of RPG systems. I agree with Mahmoud on that. Like, of course, the job system, and the leveling, and of course, in the action itself. But yeah, like you're in a, and people like to argue it's one way or the other. It's like everything is an RPG, or kind of like a very centric, like part of it is an RPG. This one, I think it's an RPG just because you have a role, you're going through, you have some skills to get like go through and have some variety in the combat eventually. You have some side quests that'll help you out as well. That'll benefit you throughout your adventure. You have party members, even though you can't really go and switch to those party members. You get party members to help you out.
Yeah.
And it's a leveling system. Like I think that's kind of enough for me to say it's a role-playing game. But you're right, Ryan. This is like, okay, where's a crafting system? Where's a jobs?
But the crafting system's there with the blacksmith. You're not doing the crafting yourself. You're bringing materials to the blacksmith to then craft items for you.
That's true. Man, I just like, I don't know why I thought Witcher when I thought this game. It's really the high fantasy stuff that really got to me, I think. But it is definitely not like Witcher in terms of the structure.
I will say though, later on in the game though, Garret, when you get further in, some of the side quests feel like they're straight out of The Witcher. Like,
oh really? Like the hunts or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, not the hunts themselves. There are side quests that happen later on in the game that feel like I'm playing a side quest from The Witcher 3. Like some of the more memorable side quests from The Witcher 3.
I'm down with that. I'm super down with that.
I'm interested to find out what you have to say about some of the later stuff. There's also a lot of dumb side quests like, hey, go serve
pick up
food in the
apples.
cafeteria and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or just literally go and pick up dirt. But so those ones less interesting. I usually just skip the dialogue on those, but you can definitely tell like when just from the initial conversation, like which ones are going to be meaty and have some, really interesting and thought-provoking story elements. And there are definitely a couple of those in here that are kind of like the Witcher ones as well that come to mind. So I do think some of that is there. And like, again, I feel like we talked about it before, but I feel like this is on the line, like as close to the line as possible of not qualifying as an RPG. But you brought up some great points, especially with party members, and especially because they're consistent party members. It's not like you just have, just guests kind of show up out of nowhere. And again, I know you could say the same thing about God of War with Atreus, but it doesn't feel the same as Atreus in your party, especially because Torgal, as an example, even though Torgal the dog is a party member of yours, you can still assign commands to Torgal, and you actually a lot of times are pressing that D-pad to tell Torgal to do stuff so that you can extend your combos or do other stuff. So it almost feels like Torgal in a way is kind of like a second playable party member, just like another RPG in a way. So yes, I definitely think there are elements in this game that feel like it's an RPG, but again, it's like the closest I would ever say on the line between action RPG and just action game with RPG elements.
Yeah, there's a spectrum, and it's like pretty much getting in the middle.
Yeah,
with that one.
If we had like our pie chart, it'd be like directly in the middle like this between the two wedges. Exactly.
Yes.
But there we go. I think that's going to do it, Garrett, for tonight's episode. This is a meaty one. I'm glad we got to talk about Final Fantasy 16. I will say as well, like I'm planning on finishing the game this week. So my full thoughts on the game, because I know a lot of people have been asking me about it, because I've been posting, I have had this thread going on Twitter about it. People have been asking when I'm going to be giving my full thoughts. That should be out next Monday. It's kind of my plan for it. Because I plan on doing like a separate video for 16, since I know it'll be a while before Garrett finishes it. And then we're going to do like a review discussion a little bit later with Court, Matt, and some other people as well. So stay tuned.
I hear Court's like in love with this game. I was so surprised,
which I never expected either. Which I'm so glad he actually gave this game a chance. Me too. Like he loves it. But
good for him.
Well, Garrett, first of all, welcome back. Welcome back to the grind that is the RPG Cave. And where can people find you on the internet, my friend?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Bland Explosion. Be careful following me, because apparently I had a spicy hot take tweet yesterday that
I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to bring it up, but you brought it up yourself, Garrett.
Oh boy. Just check my Twitter if you want to check that one out. Oh my gosh, people really take Twitter too seriously.
I mean, it was almost as big as today when Court Lalonde said that corn dogs are not actually hot dogs, and they don't exist in the hot dog family. They exist in the beef Wellington.
There's a hot dog in there.
I know. That's what I said. It doesn't make any sense.
Weird. Yeah. Anyways, at Bland Explosion, you can follow me over there. You can also I'm back to streaming a little bit. I hope to do it, once a week during the weekend, just for like an hour or so, over at twitch.tv/Bland Explosion. I am just streaming Octopath Traveler 2. I just want to keep that consistency going. I went back into it yesterday, actually. And man, oh man, I missed it. I actually missed that game. Like I went back to it. I was like, oh yeah, turn-based combat. That's my bread and butter. That's what I love from my RPGs. So very excited. Yeah.
Nice. Oh my God, the chat's popping off right now about corn dogs.
Well, those are sausages, little sausages, not
hot dogs, that's not part of the hot dog family. It's part of the sausage family. It's a sausage dish. Pigs in a blanket.
What do you mean by hot dog family? Are you talking about like different toppings and like buns and like coverings around the hot dog?
I think like different styles of hot dog. Like so a corn dog. A corn dog fits in with a Chicago dog, as well as a chili cheese dog, as well as your traditional ballpark Frank. Like I feel like they all kind of are part of the same family. Not this nonsense that it's part of the beef Wellington family, because the hot dog is made of beef.
What is beef Wellington? Jeez.
So beef Wellington is basically like a piece of roast beef, but it has you bake like a loaf of bread around it. So it's got like a bread crust on it.
That's part of the meatloaf. It was like family of some kind. I don't even know.
Where are we?
I don't even know.
We got to get out of here. But before we go, number one, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming right here, youtube.com/Carpool Gaming, of course, podcast services around the globe. But also important to note, this is episode 98, Garrett. Our characters are level 99. So next week will be episode 99 of the RPG Cave, Garrett. We're finally hit the max level of the dungeon, Garrett. Can you believe we made it?
We made it. Wow. And we didn't die.
We didn't die. The boss didn't kill us. Oh my God. Oh my God. Expect a very nerdy episode of the RPG Cave, folks, is all I'm going to say. At this point.
Very nerdy.
Oh my God, people are still going on about hot dogs in the chat. All right, so for Garrett Plan, I am Ryan Turford. This has been the 98th level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.